was the first 2 times. But I think it made the journey pretty well. It is on the Tryon Palace ticket, and they do tours, at 3 o'clock guided tours through this house. It is beautiful and worth seeing. The wood is incredible. You see the influence of the design of the palace on the pediment and doors and windows, and the dental work. It is all privately owned and maintained, except for the ones I'm pointing out to you that the Tryon Palace owns, and they maintain them. There are 2 organizations in town, the City Commission and the Preservation Wing of the. In December of 1922, a terrible fire broke out down on the marina, and firemen dashed down, thought they had it out, and then a fire broke out just west of here. And they went to that fire, had the wrong hose cut in. The case lifted in town. As I said, there I have to, all these are maintained as they were, so there's constant maintenance going on. If you see these 2 beautiful solid walnut doors with the beautiful leaded glass in them, when they first restored this house, they found 12 coats of church. It's the historic AME African American Episcopal Church. And the night of the fire, many of the people, as you can imagine, sought refuge here. One of the people that sought refuge here was a young woman who was about to give birth. And she did. She had a little boy. And she said to the doctor, "I have no idea what to do." He said, "Well, you have no choice. You have to make it St. Cyprian emergency. Still leave it outside, close the plexiglass, leave it outside instead of putting it so that the whole community could enjoy it," which I think was a really nice gesture. Now we're following up to our first stop at my favorite place, obviously Cedar Grove Cemetery. The Cedar Grove Cemetery was they are threatened. And we actually have collections on the shelf. The North Carolina Aquarium down at Pine Knoll Shores, just about an hour. They're actually working on reconstituting the oyster population. So you can't use them for decorative purposes anymore. They have to be dropped off at the collection spots. They do use them for cement mixes and that sort of thing, round up. But that's why they haven't been. They were initially used because they used what we have here, and this is what we had, oyster shells. But that's why it's not replenished in that end. You also see Spanish moss, which you don't see usually this far north. I always think of Savannah when I think of Spanish moss, but I think it likes old cedar trees, although you see it on some of the crepe myrtles. People often, not often, but occasionally want to grab some to take home to their indoor plants. I always say, unless you can get it to a microwave really quickly, it has lots of little critters in it. So it's not a great thing to grab a bunch and take home. This, as you can tell by the blackened stone, is the oldest family plot. This is the John Wright Stanley plot. John Wright Stanley and Ann Cogdale Stanley are buried at Christ Church, but this is their family plot. This plot belongs to John Dave Stanley. He was a hero at Guilford Courthouse during the Revolutionary War, which we lost, you might remember, but sent everybody up for Yorktown. Sent them up for Yorktown. So we have his stone, that old stone there in the left-hand corner is his stone. Guilford Courthouse, they have a national cemetery there. They wanted his remains, so they have his remains, but we have his stone. The other thing that's important about this family plot is you see the Christian cross with the Star of David. That wasn't really smart of you. Yeah, aren't you smart? No, you know what? You're going to see it again in all those small towns in the South. When the townspeople came back to Newbern at the end of the war, the Civil War, they found that the Union soldiers that had been killed in that battle on March 14th of 1862 were buried in marked graves. And we do have about a mile over here, we have a national cemetery with the white obelisks that you see at Arlington and other national cemeteries, and that was started right after the Civil War. They're buried there. But the Confederate soldiers, there were 88 of them, and they were thrown in the mass grave. So the women of William Gaston. He was a native New Bern son. He was one of the first to matriculate through New Bern Academy. He graduated from Georgetown University and Princeton Law School. He was a much loved, revered figure in New Bern. He did have one fatal flaw. He was Roman Catholic. Remember that King George wanted these colonies to be Protestant. He and the Pope were not on friendly terms. And so until 1831 in the Constitution of North Carolina, and I suspect in the Constitution of many colonial states, it was stated that only Protestants could run for public office. So after what I've told you about William Gaston, he was a Renaissance man. He wrote the Old North State Song, and people loved him and felt he was a fair and one of their prized citizens. Remember John Wright Stanley Jr., the white John Stanley, was a politician, and at that time he was a young politician, but he spoke up for his friend William Gaston in the state legislature and said this is a person that the community reveres, and they definitely would like him to represent them, and they deserve it. So the state legislature did grant him special dispensation. He was allowed to serve in the state legislature, and he also was elected to the U.S. Congress 2 terms, and they wanted him to go back for a 3rd term, but he missed New Bern. So he came back, opened his law office here, and remained here.